September 23rd, 1382. Venice's doge dies from poison. This wasn't murder. This was business. Venice wasn't a city. It was the world's first cartel. Same families funding crusades by day, bankrupting kingdoms by night. Their method? Identical to modern drug cartels. But one family's secret was buried so deep, it took me 6 months to find. What they did next will destroy everything you think you know about power. 1347. The Black Death hits Europe. 1/3 of the population dies screaming. But not the Venetians. They knew it was coming. See, while other cities burned their dead, Venice was already importing grain from Egypt. While kings begged for loans, Venetian banks were buying up entire trade routes. They didn't just survive the apocalypse. They orchestrated it. The Medici family? Amateurs. The Rothschilds? Late to the party. Venice perfected economic warfare 600 years before Wall Street existed. They controlled the spice trade like Pablo Escobar controlled cocaine. Same territories, same violence, same untouchable wealth. But here's what history books won't tell you. The real power wasn't gold. It wasn't spices. It was information. Every merchant ship was a spy network. Every trade route, a data pipeline. They knew about wars before kings declared them. Market crashes before coins stopped flowing. And in 1463, they made one move so ruthless, so perfectly calculated, it created the blueprint every shadow organization still uses today. Stay until the end, because what I'm about to show you will make you question every history lesson you've ever learned. Hey, if you're as obsessed with hidden history as I am, smash that subscribe button. We're digging up secrets they buried for centuries. And seriously, drop a comment telling me which cartel comparison blew your mind most. The spice trade? The information networks? I read every single one. Tomorrow, we're exposing how the Templars actually never disappeared. They just rebranded. You won't want to miss it. 1297. Venice controls the world. Every ship crossing the Mediterranean pays Venice. Every spice from Asia flows through Venice. Every loan to a European king comes from Venice. But this wasn't luck. This was engineered. For families own everything. The Contarini control the banks. The Dandolo own the shipping routes. The Morosini monopolized the spice trade. The Mocenigo dominate silk and silver. Together, they're unstoppable. When England needs money for war, they borrow from Venice at 40% interest. When France wants Asian silk, they pay Venice's price. When the Pope needs ships for a crusade, Venice names the terms. But here's what history books won't tell you. These families didn't compete with each other. They coordinated. Secret meetings, price fixing, territory agreements, market manipulation. Sound familiar? The Contarini would artificially restrict silver supply. Prices skyrocket. The Mocenigo, who stockpiled silver for months, sell at massive profits. They split the earnings. The Dandolo would delay spice shipments. The Morosini would raise prices. European nobles pay triple. Both families feast. This wasn't free trade. This was organized crime. And their biggest target? Their own government. Because in Venice, the government wasn't separate from business. It was the business. The same man collecting your taxes in the morning was fixing your prices in the afternoon. The judge hearing your case owned the company you were suing. For 400 years, this machine printed money. Until one family got too greedy. Until one secret threatened to expose everything. Until Giovanni Mocenigo made the mistake that would bring down an empire. But first, you need to see how deep this corruption went. 1350. Venice owns Europe's soul. But ownership isn't just about money. It's about control. And these families had perfected the art of invisible chains. Here's how the machine actually worked. The Contarini didn't just lend money to kings. They placed their sons as royal advisors. When England's Edward III needed funds for the 100 Years' War, Contarini gold came with Contarini Council. Every military decision, every trade agreement, every diplomatic move filtered through Venice. The Dandolo went deeper. They didn't just own ships. They owned the captains, the dock workers, the port officials. When a merchant ship arrived in London carrying French wine, Dandolo agents already knew its cargo, its value, its destination. They bought the wine before it touched English soil, resold it at double price, and the English never knew they'd been robbed. The Morosini perfected the ultimate scam: artificial scarcity. They would buy every gram of black pepper from India, store it in secret warehouses, then spread rumors of failed harvests. European nobles, terrified of losing their spices, would pay 10 times normal price. The Morosini would release just enough supply to seem legitimate, keeping prices inflated for months. But the Mocenigo? They played a different game entirely. Giovanni Mocenigo understood something his rivals missed. Information was more valuable than gold. While other families fought over trade routes, he built the world's first intelligence network. Mocenigo agents in every European court. Merchants who were actually spies. Ship captains reporting convoy movements. Bankers sharing rival families' financial positions. Giovanni knew which kings were broke before their own treasurers did. He knew which cities were planning revolts before their own citizens did. He knew which of his fellow Venetian nobles were plotting against each other before they struck. And that's when he made his fatal mistake. Because in 1378, Giovanni discovered something that would change everything. A secret so dangerous that it threatened to destroy not just his rivals, but Venice itself. He found proof that the other three families weren't just stealing from Europe. They were stealing from Venice, from their own people, from their own government. And Giovanni decided to use that information to destroy them all. But what he didn't realize was that his enemies had been watching him too. And they had already decided that Giovanni Mocenigo was too dangerous to live. The war was about to begin. Blood doesn't wash out of marble. The Doge's palace learned this lesson in 1379, when Andrea Contarini's body was found floating in the Grand Canal. Officially, it was an accident. Unofficially, it was a message. The gentleman's agreement was over. For decades, Venice's four families have played by unspoken rules. Steal from foreigners, not each other. Manipulate markets, not murder rivals. Keep the blood outside the city walls. They broke those rules. Giovanni's intelligence network had uncovered the unthinkable. The Contarini weren't just embezzling from royal loans. They were skimming from Venice's own treasury. The Dandolo weren't just overcharging foreign merchants. They were underreporting taxes to the state. The Morosini weren't just manipulating spice prices. They were bribing Venice's own food inspectors. Treason against their own republic. Giovanni held the evidence. Forged documents, bribed witnesses, financial records proving years of systematic theft. Enough to execute entire bloodlines. But Giovanni didn't want executions. He wanted surrender. March 15th, 1380. Secret meeting in the basement of San Marco Cathedral. Giovanni faces the three patriarchs: Lorenzo Contarini, Marco Dandolo, Andrea Morosini. His terms were simple. Transfer half of all overseas assets to Mocenigo control. Accept junior partnership in all future ventures. Or watch Venice burn as he exposes their crimes to the Doge. The patriarch's response was equally simple. Lorenzo Contarini stood first. You have 30 days to reconsider, Giovanni. Use them wisely. Marco Dandolo smiled. Accidents happen so frequently in Venice, especially to those who can't swim. Andrea Morosini said nothing. He just drew his finger across his throat. Giovanni had 30 days to live. But he wasn't defenseless. The Mocenigo family controlled something more dangerous than gold or ships or spices. They controlled information. And Giovanni was about to weaponize every secret he'd ever collected. The war for Venice's soul was about to begin. Three families against one. Infinite resources against desperate cunning. Professional killers against a man who knew where all the bodies were buried. Literally, poison tastes like bitter almonds. Giovanni Mocenigo would learn this on September 23, 1382. But the lesson came too late. The three families had spent 2 years planning the perfect murder. Not a blade in an alley, not a push from a bridge. Something elegant, something that looked natural, something that would die with Giovanni and take his secrets to the grave. They chose the Feast of San Marco, Venice's most sacred celebration. The entire city would be drunk, distracted, celebrating. The perfect cover for assassination. The weapon? Giovanni's own ambition. For months, Lorenzo Contarini had been feeding Giovanni false intelligence. Fake reports of a massive spice convoy from Constantinople. Fictional accounts of Turkish merchants desperate to sell below market price. Imaginary profits that would dwarf anything the Mocenigo family had ever seen. Giovanni took the bait. He liquidated everything. Sold properties called in loans, emptied family vaults. 3 million ducats, equivalent to $300 million today. Ready for the deal of a lifetime. September 23rd, sunset. The Contarini Palazzo. Giovanni arrives alone, against his bodyguard's advice. The contract is waiting. The Turkish merchants are actually Dandolo assassins in disguise. The wine is prepared by Andrea Morosini's personal chef. The toast was simple: to new partnerships. Giovanni raised his goblet. The 3 patriarchs raised theirs. 4 men drank. Only 3 men walked away. But Giovanni didn't die quietly. As the poison coursed through his veins, he realized the trap. With his last breath, he gasped 3 words that chilled his killers. The documents hidden because Giovanni had prepared for this. Somewhere in Venice, evidence of the 3 families' crimes lay waiting. Detailed records of their treason. Proof that could still destroy them all. The assassins had killed their target, but they hadn't killed the threat. They had 72 hours to find those documents before Giovanni's death raised suspicions. 72 hours to tear Venice apart stone by stone. And if they failed, their murders would be the least of their crimes. The hunt for Giovanni's evidence was about to begin. But what they found would be far worse than anything they had imagined. Because Giovanni's final revenge had already been set in motion. Dawn breaks over a city of lies. September 24th, 1382. Giovanni Mocenigo's body lies cold in the Contarini Palazzo. Venice wakes to news of his sudden illness. The official story: too much wine, weak heart, tragic accident. But 3 families know the truth. And they have less than 3 days before questions become investigations. The Dandolo move first. Marco Dandolo's men storm the Mocenigo Palazzo at sunrise. They tear through Giovanni's private study, smash open secret compartments, burn every document they find. Servants are paid triple wages to forget what they saw. Guards are transferred to distant outposts. But Giovanni's mansion holds 23 rooms. His study contains 47 hidden compartments. His library houses over 3,000 documents. The Dandolo soldiers work for 18 hours straight, yet they know they're missing something. The Morosini target the banks. Andrea Morosini personally visits every Venetian financier Giovanni ever dealt with. Safety deposit boxes are emptied. Account records disappear. Clerks who handled Giovanni's transactions suffer mysterious accidents, broken arms, damaged eyes, sudden departures from Venice. The Banco di San Giorgio loses 5 employees in 2 days. The Medici branch in Venice closes permanently after its manager falls from his balcony. 3 notaries who witnessed Giovanni's transactions are found floating in different canals. The Contarini control the investigation. Lorenzo Contarini's brother sits on the Council of 10, Venice's Supreme Court. The official inquiry lasts exactly 4 hours. No autopsy, no witness testimony, no examination of the crime scene. Cause of death: natural causes. Case closed. But controlling Venice's courts isn't enough. Word spreads beyond the city. Foreign ambassadors ask uncomfortable questions. Trading partners demand explanations. The Pope's representatives request private audiences. The families realize they need a scapegoat. October 3rd, 1382. A lowly servant named Pietro Valdrome is arrested for stealing from the Mocenigo estate. Under torture, he confesses to poisoning his master for money. He's executed publicly 3 days later. The crowd cheers. Justice is served. The case is truly closed. But controlling Venice's courts isn't enough. Word spreads beyond the city. Foreign ambassadors ask uncomfortable questions. Trading partners demand explanations. The Pope's representatives request private audiences. The families realize they need a scapegoat. October 3rd, 1382, a lowly servant named Pietro Valderome is arrested for stealing from the Mocenigo estate. Under torture, he confesses to poisoning his master for money. He's executed publicly 3 days later. The crowd cheers. Justice is served. The case is truly closed. Except Pietro never worked for Giovanni. He was a Contarini spy, planted months earlier. His confession was scripted. His execution was theater, but they missed something crucial. Giovanni's personal secretary, Elena Grimaldi, had fled Venice the night before the murder. She carried a leather satchel containing copies of every document Giovanni had collected over 20 years. Elena wasn't just a secretary. She was Giovanni's lover, his confidant, his partner in espionage. She knew every secret, every scheme, every crime the families had committed. The families realized their mistake too late. Elena had already reached Padua, then Florence, then Rome. Each city she visited, she left copies with trusted allies. Bankers who hated Venice's monopolies. Merchants who'd been cheated by Venetian price-fixing. Church officials who suspected corruption in crusade financing. In Padua, she met with Francesco Carrara, Venice's sworn enemy. In Florence, she shared documents with the Medici Bank. In Rome, she presented evidence to Cardinal Albornoz, the Pope's most trusted advisor. August 1379. Genoa strikes. The War of Chioggia begins not with armies, but with documents. Elena Grimaldi's evidence reaches Genoa's admirals. Proof of Venice's corruption spreads to every enemy court. The world's greatest maritime empire suddenly stand alone. The three families' crimes become weapons of war. Genoa doesn't just attack Venice's ships, they attack Venice's reputation. Every port from London to Constantinople receives copies of the stolen documents. Every king who borrowed Venetian gold learns how they were cheated. Every merchant who paid Venetian prices discovers the manipulation. Admiral Luciano Doria of Genoa writes to the King of France, "Venice has stolen more from your treasury than any barbarian invasion." The French immediately seize all Venetian assets in Paris, Marseille, and Lyon. The English are even more brutal. King Richard II publicly declares Venice a nest of thieves masquerading as merchants. English ports ban all Venetian ships. Venetian traders in London are arrested as criminals. Venice's allies abandon them overnight. The Byzantine Empire cancels trade agreements worth millions of ducats. The Holy Roman Emperor freezes Venetian assets across Germany and Austria. England demands loan reparations totaling 800,000 ducats. France seizes Venetian properties in 12 cities. But the cruelest blow comes from the Pope himself. Clement VII, armed with evidence of the family's crusade fraud, excommunicates all three patriarchs. Venice, the most serene republic, is declared a den of heretics and thieves. But the worst betrayal comes from within. The three families, consumed by paranoia, turn on each other completely. Trust, the foundation of their criminal empire, crumbles into hatred and fear. October 1379. Lorenzo Contarini secretly meets with Genoese agents in Ravenna. His offer: surrender Venice's eastern territories in exchange for personal immunity and safe passage to Cyprus. The Dandolo discover the betrayal through their own spies. November 1379. Marco Dandolo retaliates by liquidating the family's joint silver reserves and fleeing to Crete with 400,000 ducats. The Morosini, left bankrupt, attempt to assassinate Dandolo's son in revenge. December 1379. Andrea Morosini, desperate and cornered, attempts a coup against Doge Andrea Contarini, Lorenzo's own cousin. The plot fails. Venice's government fractures completely. June 1380. Chioggia falls to Genoa. Venice's southern gateway is captured after a siege lasting only 6 days. The city's defenders, demoralized by their leaders' betrayals, surrender without a real fight. Genoese ships control the Adriatic. The city that once ruled the Mediterranean is trapped in its own lagoon, starving and desperate. The psychological impact is devastating. Venice's citizens, learning of their leaders' crimes through Genoese propaganda, riot in streets. The Doge's palace is stormed. The arsenal workers go on strike. The city's legendary unity dissolves into chaos. The family's empire crumbles in months. For centuries of monopolies destroyed by their own greed. The Contarini banking network collapses as foreign creditors demand immediate repayment. The Dandolo shipping empire is seized by Genoese admirals. The Morosini spice warehouses are burned by angry Venetian mobs. Generations of wealth evaporated by their own corruption. Lorenzo Contarini dies, penniless in exile. Marco Dandolo is assassinated by his own bodyguards. Andrea Morosini survives, but loses everything: his fortune, his family, his sanity. The most powerful criminal organization in history brought down by a single act of betrayal. Giovanni Mocenigo's final revenge for beyond the grave. But Venice survives, barely, through desperate diplomacy and massive bribes. The city's last remaining gold. Venice negotiated the Treaty of Turin in August 1381. The war ends, but at a catastrophic price. Venice surrenders half its territories, pays war reparations equivalent to 50 million modern dollars, accepts permanent Genoese naval bases in the Adriatic. The treaty transforms Venice from a global superpower into a regional city-state. The Golden Age is over. Never again will Venice dominate global trade. Never again will they control Europe's economy. Never again will they strike fear into the hearts of kings and emperors. The lessons are written in blood and gold. First, monopolies are self-destructive. The family's greed made them enemies of everyone they cheated. When crisis came, they had no allies, only victims seeking revenge. Every customer they robbed became a potential enemy. Every partner they betrayed became a future threat. Modern parallels are everywhere. Standard Oil's monopoly created the antitrust movement. Microsoft's dominance sparked government intervention. Facebook's data abuse triggered global regulation. Power concentrated always faces resistance. Second, corruption spreads like poison. The family's crimes against foreigners became crimes against their own people, then crimes against each other. Evil always turns inward. They started by cheating foreign merchants. Then they robbed their own government. Finally, they murdered each other. Corruption has no natural boundaries. It consumes everything it touches. Third, information is the ultimate weapon. Giovanni's documents destroyed more than any army could. In the age of secrets, truth becomes revolution. Elena Grimaldi's leather satchel accomplished what decades of warfare couldn't. One woman with the right documents brought down an empire that had survived crusades, plagues, and invasions. But the most important lesson is this. Every empire built on lies eventually faces its reckoning. The Venetian families thought they were untouchable, that their wealth made them immortal, that their power placed them above justice. They controlled kings, bought popes, owned entire governments. They believed they had transcended the rules that governed ordinary mortals. They were wrong. History remembers Venice as a glorious republic of art and culture. The tourist guides speak of Titian and Tintoretto, of magnificent architecture and romantic gondolas. They celebrate Venice as the birthplace of capitalism, the cradle of international trade. But now you know the truth. Behind the marble palaces and golden mosaics lived the world's first organized crime syndicate. Behind the romantic canals and beautiful bridges ran rivers of blood money. The Renaissance masters painted their masterpieces with gold stolen from European treasuries. The magnificent churches were built with profits from manipulated markets. The famous carnival masks weren't just fashion. They were symbols of a city built on deception. The methods they perfected, price fixing, market manipulation, political corruption, systematic violence, didn't die with them. They evolved. They spread. They found new homes in new centuries. The Rothschild banking empire used Venetian financial techniques. The British East India Company adopted Venetian monopoly strategies. The American robber barons employed Venetian political corruption. And in the 20th century, these methods found their perfect expression in the criminal organizations that would make the Venetian families look like amateurs. Because 600 years later, in the mountains of Colombia, another group of families would use the exact same playbook to build their own empire. The same territorial agreements, the same price coordination, the same political corruption, the same systematic violence against rivals. But where the Venetians dealt in silk and spices, the Colombians would deal in something far more profitable. Where the Venetians corrupted medieval courts, the Colombians would corrupt modern governments. Where the Venetians killed with poison, the Colombians would kill with bullets. Before the Medellín Cartel, there was Venice, and the shadow they cast still darkens our world today. Pablo Escobar never read about Giovanni Mocenigo, but he used the same methods, the same ruthless logic, the same fatal arrogance. Some empires fall, others just change their name. The Venetian model didn't disappear, it went underground. It crossed oceans. It adapted to new times, new products, new opportunities. And somewhere in the world today, another group of families is using these same methods to build their own shadow empire. The game never ends. Only the players change. The Venetian playbook never died. It just found new masters, new products, new victims. In 1982, exactly 600 years after Giovanni Mocenigo's murder, Pablo Escobar sat in a Medellín mansion counting more money than the Venetian families ever dreamed of. Same territorial agreements, same political corruption, same systematic elimination of rivals. But Escobar made one crucial mistake the Venetians never did. He got sloppy. He got arrogant. He forgot the most important rule of shadow empires. Stay invisible. The story of how Venice's criminal methods evolved into the world's most powerful drug cartel is darker, bloodier, and more shocking than anything you've heard today. Because the Medellín Cartel didn't just copy the Venetian model, they perfected it. And the evidence I uncovered will change everything you think you know about the war on drugs. If this story blew your mind, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because next, we're diving into the blood-soaked mountains of Colombia. And trust me, after you see what Pablo learned from Venice's ghosts, you'll never look at modern crime the same way again. Drop a comment below. What shocked you most about Venice's secret empire? I read every single one. Until next time, remember, history's darkest secrets are hiding in plain sight. You just have to know where to look.